Hi everybody, welcome back to Law Hero. This is a really quick video on what the different practice areas are in different law firms. So obviously we have a number of different types of law firms in Ireland. We have the big private practice law firms, the Arthur Cox, A&L Goodbody, Matheson, McCann's, Mason Hayes and Curran, Eversheds, Goodbody, or Fry's, all of those type of kind of big law firms who have very broad practices. Then you have the kind of mid-tier law firm who I would consider like Dillon Eustace, LK Shields. I'm really bad at remembering names, but yeah, mid-tier law firms. And then you have like the smaller law firms which would be considered general practices, and they would have maybe only one or two practice areas, a smaller amount of solicitors, and they might be in some small towns, for example. And it's important to know what different practice areas they operate in so that you have, you know, a kind of an understanding of their business model and, you know, what area they operate in. So the big law firms normally have a very broad corporate practice, or they might have a very broad finance practice and litigation. They're kind of like the three big areas you would see. And then you would also see like a property, tax, IPIT, competition law, environmental law, construction, and that kind of thing as well. They would be kind of considered the more niche areas, but again, they'd have like 3 or 4 people working in them, so by other people's standards they're quite big. And yeah, they would be kind of considered the big law, big ticket items. So I have a list here. So banking and finance law, as I just said, it's kind of obvious what that is. Banking is obvious, but finance could also be like debt capital markets, or you could also have funds, like investment funds. In some of the UK law firms you'll see derivatives, just specialising in derivatives just because that's become such big business. Or in finance you might also have financial regulation might be out on its own, so that would be what would be considered banking and finance. And then obviously at a mid-tier law firm level you would have solicitors advising SMEs, small medium enterprises, be they borrowers, they might also be lenders, but not often. And as I said, you might have competition law. This is actually becoming like a growing area, especially with the globalization of the world and that the EU has such a strong take on kind of economic policy. So the competition law is definitely growing. It's becoming more of a more heavily regulated area. Construction law is quite a big area as well. We have some more regulation after coming in there as well in 2013. And Ireland is a growing economy, so construction law is very important. There's also a lot of disputes and litigation in construction law, a lot of arbitration and stuff, so that's a growing area. Corporate law is extremely broad. You're not just talking mergers and acquisitions. They kind of look after lots of different corporate issues, like you might have like an intergroup reorganization which might be needed to change up tax structures. There might be monies or dividends or capital contributions going between different entities. You have the distinction between private and public companies, which both need to be advised in kind of a different manner. Public companies are far more heavily regulated, especially if they're trading on stock exchanges. You might also just have private equity, and those can be quite complicated deals. But yeah, I mean, corporate's a very broad practice in a big law firm. Litigation departments in corporate law firms, and they'll also be split up depending on what the teams do. So you might have like medical negligence, you might have kind of commercial litigation, which could be anything really. You could have like people who specialize in investigations and white collar crime and that kind of thing, and defenses. So litigation in big firms is extremely broad. And then of course you have like judicial review and court and all of that stuff. That of course is in smaller law firms as well, just normally the clients are smaller, so you'd probably be in more of the lower courts, but again, not always. It depends on what the quantum is or what the claim is. you will normally see smaller law firms be engaged more in criminal defence litigation or kind of smaller civil matters in district and circuit court, just because their clients are normally natural persons rather than legal persons. Employment law is also a big area that is seen in bigger law firms, obviously because you have big entities coming to the big law firms with like mass redundancies or kind of big ticket employment issues around, like, you know, maternity leave or unemployment or whatever is cropping up. But again, you'll have small employment issues in small firms, so it's not necessarily true. I think energy and infrastructure law and public procurement is a big part of big law firm work, and that's becoming more litigious and becoming much more heavily regulated. Public procurement is very specialized. Even though Ireland's a small country, it's there aren't many people who specialize in that, but the rules around it are kind of EU based, so it's a bit like competition law in that way. On commercial contracts, you don't really see those you won't really have people specialize in those in the big law firms. That would kind of be shared by like corporate or whoever the client is, whoever the client partner is, depending where they're at. But in the kind of mid-tier law firms, you'll see kind of commercial contract specialists, just because it's just not specialized enough for the big law firms, and a lot of that is done in-house. Environmental law is definitely a big law firm area. It requires a lot of kind of like regulatory understanding, but also brings into play like judicial review as well of planning decisions. Family law is definitely a small law firm matter. You won't see it in the big law firms, and you know what I'm talking about, like taking custody of children, or if there's separation agreements, divorce, that kind of stuff. Healthcare is a big area in Ireland at the moment, especially with cervical cancer checks. So I mean, those big public authorities need to be defended. That will normally be done by the big law firms, and the claims will obviously be taken by small law firms. And because again, the claimants are natural people. There will be big kind of insolvency law branches as well of big law firms. They'll normally be like an area that's kind of like semi-litigious, semi kind of it sits between kind of litigation and corporate, so that's important. There's a lot of filings to be done there as well. Property law, they are extremely important in every single law firm in Ireland. Obviously the big law firms will have bigger projects, but you know, they need to work in tandem with corporate and finance to get deals done, because there's normally always a property involved. Insurance law would kind of be seen as a branch of corporate law, simply because like you're dealing with regulated entities, but a lot of the time they're just moving money around, or they're reorganizing their structures. It's again heavily regulated. IPIT is growing, and more smaller practitioners are having to learn about intellectual property and information technology, just because it's becoming such a massive part of every business's work. So it's not just the big technologically advanced clients who need to know about this stuff anymore, but obviously in the big law firms they're probably getting more novel technology coming to them, and they kind of need to know more about the market. Tax is massive. Tax law, I mean, tax can make or break a deal, so they're extremely important area for any law firm to have, big law firms. And then you will have like the private client stuff. Now big law firms can do some private client stuff, but this is normally done by smaller law firms who know the person or the family better. They look after their estate planning, their wills, that kind of stuff. And it's normally like, you know, a trusted solicitor they've known for years, so that would be more of a smaller law firm. So yeah, that's just like a whistle-stop tour of different practice areas in Irish law firms. By no means comprehensive, it's by no means exhaustive, it's just like me giving you a quick overview. And it was suggested, I think it's a good idea just to have a quick overview before you go into a law firm, to know like broadly what the areas are. Or if you're just lazy, you don't want to read the website, just listen to me telling you. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Please follow me at Law Hero IRL on Instagram. If you have any questions, please email me at info@lawhero.eu. My website's lawhero.eu if you need some more information, and I'll see you in the next one.